You're listening to Audiology. Support this channel by becoming a member and be sure to submit your requests for topics in the comments below. The fifth party system, which is also known around as the New Deal party system, kicked off with Franklin D. Roosevelt becoming president in 1932. Roosevelt rolled out the New Deal, significantly boosting the federal government's size and power more than ever before in the U.S. This move signaled the start of the Democratic Party's strong hold on American politics, a grip that stayed pretty firm until 1952. During this time, we also saw major shifts in party ideologies, shaping the Democrats and Republicans into what we recognize today. This big shakeup included most black voters moving from the Republican side to the Democratic side. Meanwhile, a lot of conservative, white, typically Southern Democrats started leaning towards the Republican Party, especially as the Democrats began putting more emphasis on civil rights. This realignment kept picking up speed into the 1960s. The era we're talking about here came right after what's known as the Progressive Era, or the Fourth Party System, and set the stage for the Sixth Party System that followed. When the Great Depression hit, it really shook everyone's belief in the Republican promise of ongoing prosperity. This change in mood paved the way for Franklin D. Roosevelt and the Democrats to win 4 elections in a row, giving them nearly undisputed control. By 1936, the Democratic Party was riding high on the success of the New Deal coalition, which stayed in the driver's seat until Dwight D. Eisenhower clinched a win for the Republicans in 1952. Even though the Democrats, backed by the energy of the New Deal supporters, seemed to have the upper hand, an alliance of Northern Republicans and Southern Democrats, known as the Conservative Coalition, actually had a tight grip on Congress from 1938 all the way through to 1964. What's interesting, though, is that the New Deal coalition was quite a mixed bag, bringing together groups that hadn't typically worked together before. This included Catholics, Jews, liberal Southerners, union workers, city folks involved in mechanics, forward-thinking scholars, rural activists, and even some former Republicans from the Northeast. These diverse groups became the core supporters of the Democratic Party, shaping its direction well into the future. On the flip side, the Republican Party was going through its own transformation. This period saw the emergence of 2 factions within the party: a conservative branch led by folks like Senator Robert A. Taft and Barry Goldwater, and a more liberal group that included Thomas Dewey, Nelson Rockefeller, and several others. The liberal Republicans enjoyed a run of electoral success until 1968, when Richard Nixon's victory signaled a significant win for the conservative Republicans, despite the fact that Eisenhower, who was more of a moderate, had been the face of the mean party before. Even with his conservative platform, Nixon surprised everyone by expanding liberal policies and famously declared, "We are all Keynesians now," in 1971. But then, the Watergate scandal hit, severely damaging Nixon's reputation and dimming the public view of the Republican Party. This setback lasted until 1980, when Ronald Reagan stepped onto the scene, rejuvenating the party and pushing it in a distinctly conservative direction, so much so that the remaining liberals in the party shifted over to the Democrats. Reagan's election is often seen as a pivotal moment, closing the chapter on the so-called Fifth Party System and ushering in the Sixth Party System, which we're still part of today. Back in 1967, Chambers and Burnham came up with this idea of categorizing American political history into different party systems, each marked by distinct periods and characteristics. This concept has been a hot topic among political scientists who have been busy debating whether we have seen the end of the so-called Fifth Party System and the emergence of a sixth. Some scholars in the 1970s were convinced we had already moved past the Fifth Party System, with a few even suggesting it ended as early as 1960. Fast forward to 2011, and in the book Parties and Elections in America, The Electoral Process, authors L. Sandy Maisel and Mark D. Brewer present a compelling case that, according to the consensus among experts, we are currently in the midst of the Sixth Party System. This conclusion is drawn from significant changes observed in American electoral politics since the 1960s. Yet, even with this broad agreement, there is lively debate around how exactly we transition to this new system and what defines it. When it comes to pinpointing when the Fifth Party System ended, opinions vary widely, from the elections between 1966 and 1968 to the 1972 election, all the way through the 1980s and 90s, with arguments centering on political unification, partisanship, and cultural divides. Stephen Craig specifically highlights the 1972 elections, with Richard Nixon's sweeping victory as a turning point. He emphasizes the dramatic and sweeping changes of the 1960s as a critical election period, marking the undeniable rise of a new, candidate-centered political landscape. The Princeton Encyclopedia of American Political History marks the start of this sixth-party system in 1980, coinciding with Ronald Reagan's election and a shift in the Senate towards the Republicans. Arthur Paulson sums up the sentiment, suggesting the emergence of the sixth-party system occurred between 1964 and 1972, regardless of whether one labels these changes as a realignment. Thanks for watching. Share your thoughts in the comments and subscribe for more content.